What's up, guys? Paulie Malignaggi here for Paulie TV. We're back. 2023 has gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but we're picking things up here in boxing. Some decent fights are getting talked about, even some signed. I'll discuss those in another video. But right now, we're going to talk about Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. It's the fight that was going to happen, didn't happen, kept on getting signed up, and then not happening again. Finally, we're going to get it. In some people's eyes, this is Jake Paul's first boxing opponent. I don't see it that way. I actually think some of the guys Jake has already beaten are probably a bit better than Tommy. Now, I'm going to put it to you like this. Fury does come from a boxing family. Obviously Tyson is the best heavyweight on the planet. But just because he's been in and around boxing, he's even had some amateur fights, doesn't mean that he's got the combat experience in the same manner. It comes to him as naturally as it does some of the other fighters that even Jake has fought. This kid has been sort of almost like the English version of Jake Paul, in that he's acquired his fame through other means, and then he came into boxing. In Tommy's case, it's come back into boxing, while in Jake's case he started boxing. Now, Tommy was always around the boxing scene because his brother Tyson and his cousins and his family are a fighting family. Really, Tommy, went in a different route. He's got a lot of other avenues he can go. He's a good-looking guy. He went the modeling route. He went the reality TV route. It went great for him. But in seeing the fights that I've seen him in, I don't really care how much experience he's got. He doesn't really look that comfortable. There was one particular fight that I saw maybe last year when he was on the Jake Paul card when he fought that 1-4 guy. It was just like a sloppy fight. It wasn't really. He wasn't really able to find the proper distance on his shots, and he wasn't really able to even hurt this guy who was shouldn't have been on his level at all. And he wasn't, but it just didn't look that neat, that tidy to me against a guy of that caliber. Obviously, I'm sure he's been working out since then. I mean, listen, Jake. Every time I see Jake fight, he gets better and better. He looks better the last fight than he did the previous fight, and the previous fight he looked better than he did the fight before that. So Jake is obviously putting in the work. If there's a dedication that Jake has in Tommy, then Tommy obviously has already a foundation for boxing, and if he puts in the time and effort, who knows, maybe he's going to make these drastic improvements too. But going off of what I've seen from Tommy Fury and what I've seen from Jake Paul, I just don't see the fight being that good of a fight. I see Jake winning the fight. Jake has a better understanding of his distance, of his range, how to maximize the leverage on his shots. You're even starting to see Jake set some traps here and there, especially with the Tyron Woodley knockout. He actually dropped a nice feint right before that, and got Woodley to react to it before hitting him with that overhand right. It was like a delayed reaction to a feint. It was like a feint, a little stutter, and then a shot that knocked out Woodley. But nonetheless, I just don't see Fury having the even the mental know-how. This is what I'm saying. Like you spend time in the gym, you spend time working out, you spend time just inundated with boxing. You become a thinker of boxing, right? And Jake, for all the things that he could have going on in his life, boxing has really inundated his life because he makes improvements that are also mental and psychological and not just physical. So that only comes from a person that's thinking boxing a lot and thinking about boxing all the time, and it's on his mind. With Tommy, he's got the boxing background from the amateurs, but again, like I said, this is a guy who's been around boxing, but doesn't make you a boxer. Like, for example, my best friend, Peter Cards, some of you might remember him from an old podcast I used to do, From Brooklyn to the World. Peter Cards has been around boxing all his life, my best friend. He used to box a little bit when he was younger, started again. He never really fought, you know what I'm saying? Like, he just was always in and around the gym. Yes, I know Tommy had some amateur fights, but nonetheless, it doesn't... there's a much different level. Even though you're around it and you're training in it, when you're not competing in it often, and when you're not inundating your mind with it often, you don't develop the same way a fighter would. Even an MMA fighter that turns to boxing, who's had combat in his career his whole time, and it's been on his mind a lot. So for these reasons, the fight is interesting. Both have a big selling point, obviously, and we're gonna get to that in a second. The marketability of the fight, but I just don't think competitively, from a boxing standpoint, Tommy is even on the level of like an Anderson Silva. People are complaining about the Anderson Silva fight, but Anderson Silva to me made the same mistakes all kickboxers make when they come to boxing. He crosses his feet when he comes forward instead of shuffling this way. You know what I'm saying? Instead of shuffling forward this way, he crosses his feet this way when he comes at you. And when he does that, he slows down his own feet, and Jake is able to have smoother footwork, and that really was a big difference in the fight. And then Jake was able to even walk him into a knockdown during the fight. So I mentally, Anderson is more of a fighter, I think, than Tommy, but I think from a perspective of ability-wise, I don't even know that Tommy's on the ability level of an Anderson, even when it comes to boxing. So I think from a competitive standpoint, this fight is actually going backwards a little bit for Jake, and I expect Jake to handle the fight pretty well, especially if I see the continued improvements that I've seen in Jake each and every time he's fought. Having said that, let's go into the popularity part of this. This is what boxing is becoming, just like the world in general. It's becoming very, very social media centric. And what does that mean? You are paid and you are sought after based on the social media followers and based on the reaction you get to social media. Obviously, it's a very big promotional tool. Ryan Garcia is a big example of this. He's going to headline a pay-per-view against Gervonta Davis. Well, we're in the talks. It's on and off every day. But nonetheless, he's in the talks for that fight. He's made millions. He's gotten commercials with both Modelo and Gatorade, all this other stuff. This is a guy who's never even fought for a world title. And honestly, if they make the Gervonta Davis fight, it still wouldn't be for a world title. So it just goes to show you how the landscape has changed in general. And Ryan is a good fighter. That's not even a knock on Ryan. He's actually a good fighter. To me, he's a world-class fighter. He's got world-class ability. Let's see if he's able to win at a world-class level. That's a different story altogether. But nonetheless, you're seeing that now with Jake. When you're looking at the popularity he's acquired, it comes mainly off his social media performances and all this other stuff that he's done in his life with the Disney Channel and so on and so forth. That has grown and grown and grown and grown. And, of course, that makes him popular no matter what he does. I mean, if Jake Paul did a cooking show, everybody would tune into it because he's got so much fans. They'd be interested in Jake Paul becoming a chef. But Jake Paul became a boxer, and it's exciting. It's fun, and everybody's going to follow that along him. And honestly, Tommy Fury's the same way. Yes, the Fury name brings him some boxing recognition, but Tommy Fury has been a very popular guy on social media, also with millions of followers. And, through that popularity, it's made him a more of a household name than even your average boxer, your average world championship level fighter. So that begs to ask the question, for the purists, that's going to drive them crazy. But what is a better fight? Is a better fight of two terrific fighters who don't have the following and aren't able to acquire the sales, don't have the sales pitch necessary to make the entire world watch such a high level talented fight? Or is it maybe your skills might be a little bit on a mediocre level, but you're so talented. I mean, you're so talented in the social media world. You're so popular in the social media world that now everybody's interested in the fight. And all of a sudden, the hype generates to the point where everybody starts to believe it's a better fight than what it actually is. For me personally, Jake Paul and Tommy Fury is not as good of a fight as maybe Jake Paul and some of the other opponents Jake's beaten. But you know what? The constant hype of it from both guys, because they've got such a big following, people start to believe like, oh man, this is a fight. Oh man, Jake's finally fighting a boxer. Oh man, all the selling points are starting to stick, and I believe it's gonna sell, and it's gonna get a lot of following. Now, do I necessarily agree with all this all the time? Not really, but I don't really knock Jake. Here's the thing. Jake is doing the same thing most prospects do, only he's doing it at a very popular level. So you can't knock Jake for his popularity. Like, Jake isn't beating, he's not taking on Canelos of the world, or he's not like taking on anybody less than what a regular prospect even would be taking on. You look at a lot of prospects when they first turn pro. You look at my record. There are a lot of guys, I had a terrific amateur career, but you look at a lot of guys' records from when they turn pro. They're fighting run-of-the-mill oppositional type opponents. Some of them are no-hopers, and some of them are hopers who will make you work a little bit, but they're developmental fights. What's the difference with Jake? I mean, Jake's pretty much doing the same thing, and for me, he's doing it better than Chavez Jr., who, on his way up the ladder doing the same thing, was robbing a lot of guys. At least Jake's beating his guys outright, and he's fighting these fights that are developmental nonetheless, and it's just sort of on the same path as the same developmental type of fight. But he's so popular. He's so popular that people either complain about it or they follow him or both. Nonetheless, is he really doing anything different than any other boxer besides the recognition he's getting? And if the difference is only the recognition, should people really be hating on him? That's where I start to look at it. I've met Jake Paul. He's certainly a very, very dedicated guy to the sport. It doesn't mean he's going to become world-class overnight. He may never become world-class. But all I'm saying is Jake is a guy who has dedicated himself to boxing no, despite all of the other things he could be doing, and the performances show that he has done the work and continue to improve. And honestly, it's through those improvements that really are. It's the proof that he's dedicating himself to the sport, just like any other fighter in the world that dedicates himself to the sport. You know, I can't really knock the fact that he's got all this popularity, because he earned that popularity. He didn't earn that popularity through boxing. But think about it. Anybody popular, you know, if Mick Jagger in the height of the Rolling Stones would have started boxing, think about how many people would have come to Mick Jagger's fights. You know what I'm saying? At the height of the Rolling Stones, or Eminem, or 50 Cent or something. You know what I mean? At the height of their popularity. You know what I'm saying? Or Biggie Smalls or Tupac Shakur. I mean, imagine. You know what I mean? At the height of their popularity, if they would have just started boxing, everybody would have tuned into these guys. You know what I mean? Everybody, because their popularity was astronomical in the world that they came from. So Jake is kind of the same thing. And just because he's so popular doesn't mean we have to make him fight right away. We expect him to fight world-class opposition. I think in the end he'll get to a decent level. It's hard for me to predict that Jake Paul will become a world champion, but I do think politically, from a political standpoint, it is advantageous to the sanctioning bodies and to the casinos and all this, and the promoters, to all get in good graces with Jake, because it helps. It not only helps the sport, but it helps their pockets too. And of course, we're in the world of money, where everybody's always looking to line their pockets as well. So the association will always help them. Do I necessarily think he should be ranked based on the fights he's getting? No, I that's where I do disagree. But of course, the sanctioning bodies are going to play it to the advantageous way they can play it. At no point in any prospect, I mentioned that Jake is fighting the same level of fighters that any other prospect in their career would have fought at this point in their career. No hopers, or maybe decent guys who will make you work on some things, but you'll still beat them. That's the kind of guys Jake's fighting, just like the kind of guys they are for other fighters as well. It's just he's finding them strategically from a popularity standpoint. So this is a very well marketed come up in boxing. But nonetheless, the only difference is when you're fighting those kind of guys as a professional boxer early in your professional boxing career, you will not get a ranking out of those guys. You have to legitimately fight top guys, or start getting close to fighting top guys in order to get ranked. So that's where the only difference is. But again, we don't live in a perfect world. Those are my thoughts on Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys really agree that this is Jake Paul's first real boxing opponent. I do not personally. I don't even think Tommy is on the level of some of the guys Jake's beaten already. But it's certainly a well-marketed fight, and Tommy does have some boxing background, which could lead you to think that if he's rededicated himself, maybe he's going to come better than some of the other opponents Jake has beaten. And that's why we're all going to watch the fight on this weekend, and we'll see how it goes. All right, I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV, and that's my breakdown for Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury.